We just returned from our trip to the States, and I am in the process of unpacking and getting everything back to normal here at home after having company for 2 weeks and then being away. So join me as I whip our house back into shape, get things packed away, get into the garden and process whatever is necessary, do the things that I love to do, taking care of my home and my family. So the first thing on my to-do list is to get our suitcase unpacked. I tried to get all of the dirty clothes out so I can do a load of laundry right away and pack away everything that we brought back into their spots. This was a little more challenging because I had a little toddler that did not want to be doing that, but wanted only to be held and cuddled. I think we are in teething season, and as I'm learning, it seems to be a regular thing every now and then with children, so I've just learned to roll with it. Suitcase got unpacked and a load of laundry emerged, and so I sorted the rest of our laundry. I like to sort my laundry according to the materials that sort of fit together, so the hard pants, jeans kind of things all together, and then our bed linens and other linens, towels all together, wool shirts and materials, whites, other shirts pile, and then things that can go into the dryer. I like to wash all of those together so that I can just pop the whole bundle straight into the tumble dryer when it's finished. Now we live in a small, I think it's about 800 square foot apartment on top of a barn, and so we don't have a lot of space to hang laundry, but I find if I bundle the laundry up into little piles like this, I can usually get a pile or two done a day, and that way I'm rotating through the days, and that way I can get it all done rather quickly. Now another thing on my list this week is to clean out our fridge. We've got some food that came from hosting and is a little bit overdue and just really needs a clean out, especially because we haven't been here for a couple of days. So time to get things cleaned out and make room for the groceries that I just picked up on the way home today. It feels so good to clean a fridge. It clears out all that clutter in the fridge so that I can really get a good look at what we have and make sure that I'm using up all of the produce in an efficient manner. And then I also picked up a box of mushrooms today on my way home. This was so interesting. I got told of a farm close by here that grows it, just a ma and pa shop kind of deal that grow these beautiful mushrooms, and so it was nice to support them and get all of these beautiful culinary mushrooms. I'm so excited to cook with them. And then a part of housekeeping after coming back from a trip is all the usuals, laundry, and then of course the dishes, which I just see as a nice challenge to quickly get in order. I know it's this thing that is repetitive and always has to happen, but it's interesting that to myself, I always see it as some kind of opportunity for how can I effectively manage my time and get all of these things done. You know, I like to be challenged in that way and just sort of get it all done. I just function that way, that's my personality, and so dishes is actually kind of one of those little games for me. And then I did make it out into our garden and saw that our rhubarb really needed to be harvested. It's giant, we've got so many stalks, and I would hate for it to go to waste. And it is one of my big goals to eat in season and make sure that we are using the things that we are growing at least. This year they're not going to grow and just grow, they are going to be used. I know that sounds so silly to say, but I've grown up my whole life just going to the store and buying what we need, and so I'm really trying to train myself this year to go out in the garden, get the things, and then actually use them. Or put them up before they go to waste. So, rhubarb is ready, and that calls for a rhubarb pie. I love rhubarb pie, and so I thought this would make the perfect first pie of the season. And so I'm using my food processor here to whip up a really quick pie crust recipe. Guys, it is so simple. I'm going to give you the quick rundown, and I'll leave the recipe in the description box below. So I'm doing 1 cup of flour, and then half of that of fat. So I'm going to use butter today. Put your flour and cut in your icy cold butter. So 1 cup of flour, half a cup of butter, mix it, and then 1/4 cup of icy cold water that I took out straight from the fridge. Mix it all together, and boom, I have a dough ball very quickly. Look at this. It's really just blows my mind. This food processor really makes my life in the kitchen so much easier. But how quick was that? And then if you're not using salted butter, which I will show you here, I'm using salted butter, so I didn't add any extra salt, but you may want to add some salt if you're not going to use a salted butter. And then I'm going to store this in the fridge and keep it cool, or let it sit just for a little while. Or days in the fridge, probably not more than several days. Keep an eye on it. But I am planning to make this pie rather quickly. So I'm going to whip up another batch because that's only the bottom layer and I'd like to have a top layer to our pie. So again, I'm going to quickly whip up 1 cup of flour, half a cup of butter, and a 1/4 cup of icy cold water. And the butter is cold too. I just want to make that clear. So first I blend my butter and flour all together, and then I add the cold water and mix that in. And voila, another dough ball within a matter of just a few minutes. And one day here I will make a bunch of this in advance and keep them in the freezer so that we can make pies all summer long, because for me summer just needs to have a lot of pie in it for some reason, and so I want to be ready when we are ready to be making up some pies. And then I'm going to cut up my rhubarb. Now this is a little later in the day. I'm going to prep the rhubarb so we can get that into the pie. So I sliced off the bad ends of the rhubarb and then chopped them up into roughly 1 inches. Now for the sugar today, I'm going to use organic maple sugar. I want to see if this will work with the rhubarb pie. I know rhubarb in itself isn't actually very sweet, so you kind of need the sugar to help out a bit, although when you cook rhubarb it loses that very, very tangy flavor and becomes a little less tangy, still tangy though, and so I know sugar is kind of essential to make it edible, but let's see how it goes. And then I learned this really great trick about taking 2 parchment sheets, adding the dough in between them, and then rolling out the pie crust that way from 2 lovely ladies in Moscow, Idaho. They run a podcast called What Have You. If you want to check it out, I'll link it below. And I'll link to the video where they teach about how to make their pies. And this was a really handy trick for rolling out pie and not getting it stuck to your counter, which I really like. Now it was kind of hard to do this with the dough straight out of the fridge, so maybe you want to just put it on the countertop and let it sit there for a little bit just so it's a little easier to roll out. So roll out your pie crust as thin as it requires for it to fit into your pan. And then you'll see I layered the bottom with some sugar first, then added in my rhubarb that I mixed with flour. I don't actually have a video in here, somehow that didn't record, but I mixed my rhubarb with some sugar and flour first and did put it on the stove for a little bit just to kind of release some of the juices and start mixing in that flour before I put it in here. It probably doesn't have to happen in that order, and I don't think you actually have to cook the rhubarb at all before you put it into the pan. And I don't really cook it, I only put it in for a couple minutes to get everything blended. That's just how I do it. I've seen it done that way, and so I can't help it. But you probably don't even have to do it, you could just put it in straight. But I do layer the bottom of the pie crust with a little bit of sugar first. Then I put it in the pie filling, and then I'm adding the top layer of the pie crust. And then I pinch the top and the bottom of the pie crust together and blend it by just taking my finger into these little pinches and squeezing. I don't really know exactly how to do this, but I kind of try to make it look like the pies that I've seen. And then finally I use a sharp knife to cut some slits at the top so that the pie can air out as it's baking, and pop it into the oven at 470 degrees Fahrenheit for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then I turn down the temperature to 350 degrees Fahrenheit for the last, let's say, 30 minutes until the pie is nice and done, like this. Now, it did come out quite tart. I know rhubarb is usually mixed with strawberries, and I didn't in this case, but we do like to eat ours with a lot of whipped cream and ice cream, so maybe that makes all the difference. But rhubarb in itself is quite a tart pie, so if you like it more sweet, don't use organic maple sugar. Use real sugar, and you can always mix in the strawberries, which pairs really nicely with the rhubarb. We like it just like this, and this is our first pie of the season. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for upcoming videos.